Absolutely. Thank you so much, Radhika ji. I'll come back to you in a little while. I want to go to Videshni Naidu Singh, who is regarded as a humanitarian worker. She's also an attorney, and she's working with an organization called JAM. I think it's Joint Action Management since May this year. Prior to that, she's worked for 7 years on the ground in the Lenasia area, seeking solutions for the empowerment of women and children in the community, and particularly around issues of addiction. And, as she's also created an NPO called Lightworkers Women's Organization and the Social Services Institution that often partners with them. Namaste, Videshni ji, and welcome to the program.
Namaste, Yashika. Thank you so much for having me. It is indeed a pleasure to be part of such honorable women guests.
Thank you very much. Videshni ji, you've been part of, many work programs in the community. You've also been involved with women's empowerment initiatives. Can you share a little bit about some of your experiences on the ground, noting the fact that it is the 16-day of activism period, and noting the fact that it seems to be everyone's concerned around November and we must do something because we've got to tick boxes. I work in a corporate environment and we have to look at a calendar. Did you do a program on 16 days? Did you do Heritage Days? And it shouldn't just be at this period of time, but what has been your experience on the ground?
Okay, so my experience on the ground has been the fact that, when we talk about marginalized communities, the reality is everything that we talk about is experienced to the nth level in these communities. So whether we're talking about human trafficking, gender-based violence, we're talking about toxic masculinity issues, we're talking about, the domestic violence, as I mentioned, everything happens across all different communities. But the reality is the most marginalized communities are indeed the most affected ones. My experience on the ground has largely been around creating programs for boy children. Last year, 2 years back, when I joined a social services institution, I actually went to the social services institution from training a bit at the magistrate's court, and I saw so much the gap between the social workers having to present and, provide proof for their cases, and how vulnerable children were actually sent back to abusive homes purely because, the social workers might not have had the support and professional support in order to deal with these cases. And being the personality that I am and driven from working on the ground, I entered social services institution, purely because I wanted to market the institution. But what I met there was the severe gaps that we found in terms of how inundated and over inundated social workers are dealing their normal caseload, that when it comes to providing solutions in terms of creating programs for children in schools and the like, they rely largely on support of others to do so. So when it came to especially gender-based violence, my passions were around the fact that we found in all of the schools surrounding the institution at where I worked at, there was, boy children as young as 11 years old that were raping each other in the bathrooms. And this is purely because they've had this done to them. For me, the future was set and clear that those that experience the abuse, you have to understand how much more abusive they might become. And I was so passionate about creating a program, and I led it. It was called Stop It at the Start, purely to deal with, male toxicity issues that we found were prevalent in the communities. Because if you sat with the boy children, all of them had a resounding yes when it came to, is it okay for a man to hit a woman? And they answered yes, because when we asked why, they said it was purely because, a man can hit a woman if she is cheating on him. That is what we were told. And we were told, is it ever okay for a woman to hit a man? And there was just, spontaneous laughter at that. And the result is that, if we do not jump in to tackle these issues at that level, if we do not dedicate ourselves, and, the sad thing is, I went from the courts into social services. And I started seeing, and I'm very real about experiencing breakdowns in the system everywhere. You know, right down to when we work with women at the moment, I often find that when women are seeking shelters, there's hardly a place that you could send them to. When women are seeking domestic violence orders and protection orders, they are often faced with files going missing or treated terribly at police stations. And when I talk to you about breakdown, I am telling you that I've experienced breakdown from the court experience. I've experienced breakdown from social service institutions where, we just continue to marginalize the people that are most vulnerable. And for me, I think it became so much a part of, the seva, this heavy duty that I feel upon each of us that are professional to step in and make a difference. That, yes, some years ago, 7 years ago, I created an organization around active women who felt as strong as I did about entering the arena. We did some marvelous community work in terms of, refurbishment of creches, giving support to all the creche owners, empowering them in their work. We did court packs for rape victims, and sadly so, we had to do court packs for children that were also, abuse victims in court. We did programs empowering women that had lived the lives of prostitutes and were in rehabilitation. And, while we serviced all of these nice needs, I think the true empowerment work of our organization began when we actually dedicated full-time our service to Lenasia. And we got involved in some serious programs around personal and self-transformation workshops, where we decided that we had to become the solution also in changing and transforming people's mindsets, allowing them to dictate that abuse was intolerable. But in order to do that, you had to work with them almost on a spiritual level, help them understand,
So
Sorry, Yashika?
that's beautiful. And no, that's absolutely beautiful in terms of where you have come. You have seen from the level of the mud where you can't get any responses from the judges, from the courts, from the police. We've just heard Jessica speak about the blasé attitude of this toxic masculinity approach, as well as this patriarchal system that we went through. And I think even more than patriarchy has been this paternalistic attitude that we've had to deal with over a series of time. And even the short space of our democracy can't change that generational attitude that men had on women for all that time. But yet again, we come from a culture and a tradition that exemplified the goddess. The Devi Sukta of the Rig Veda speaks so highly and eloquently of the feminine divine principle and that energy. How have you found, firstly, this contradiction of the male patriarchy within our community and even in the Hindu community, and then finding some reservoirs of energy, going back to the Vedas and going back to our scriptures to empower you to take the next step forward? So the dual question: one, how did you deal with this contradiction? And two, what was it in our scriptures that enabled you to actually go forward?
Okay, so for those that know me quite well, I've always been a Devi worshipper. So for me, and when I started doing a whole lot of spiritual reading and outside of our scriptures as well, the one thing that was resounding for me was the ability of women to heal. You see that in a mother's role. You see that in society at large. I look at with great respect at female leaders and what they bring to the party, and more often than not, it is a sense of cooperation over competition. It's a sense of bringing healing. It is a sense of bringing love and compassion. And for all those reasons, I actually believe that women are best placed in leadership today. Women should actually be at the forefront of all the solutions that we are trying to find in society, purely because women have the inherent ability to heal. And when we look at, I don't even want to go through the kind of things that I had seen firsthand on the ground, purely because it shook my world. When and I want to relate it to on this forum. I looked at a social worker one day in a drug anti-drug conference, and she stood in front of the audience and she spoke about receiving a child outside social services, the district, the department, and she spoke about the fact that this child was drenched in a substance from head to toe, and the child was handed over her to a man who said that he bought her for 30 rand on the street. And when they tested the substance, they found that it was different samples of semen on the child. And the social worker spoke about the fact that how is it, as a social worker, she could go home to lie next to her husband that night. When we realize, and from my court experience too, when we realize the levels to which society has broken down, we realize fully that if we do not act to empower women, to instill leadership in them, to respect them, to give them these roles where, they could actually start from a position of healing society, even through their professionalism. I've some years I battled so much with studying law, because I felt that, for all intents and purposes, what should be my greatest success, I was being pulled into corporate roles. And for a humanitarian heart that I had, there was always this grating at me that, I could use my professional qualifications to achieve so much more. And I call on every other woman in our organization as well. We have beautiful, wonderful souls leading light workers too. And we constantly call on them to use their professionalism even on the ground. And that is how we are creating solutions. We've created, sewing programs for women, giving them a sense of purpose. I used to drive a car from Lenasia into town every day because we had someone tutor the women on sewing skills. And a simple thing like seeing poverty-stricken women wash their faces, dress up and sit in my car, just to say, Videshni, we feel like we're working now. We're working towards something. And I realized it had to begin with a shift in their spiritual mindset, within their emotional mindset. And when we bring it back to our scripture, there is one very important, and I keep looking for it. It is about the fact that even India will become the great nation again when we resurrect women as mother. And I'm sorry, sometimes I believe that Bollywood too has contributed to objectifying women. And I believe even in our own country, we should start reporting all of our, comedians that make fun of women, purely because it is those things at that level that actually allow the abuse to creep in, because you are belittling, you are denigrating, and you are enforcing a thought process where you're treating women like nothing. Sorry, I get emotional about these issues, but yeah.
No, I absolutely agree. And I think I hear your passion because it comes from the heart space. And I think this is what our country needs to learn, and the global community. And I'm so happy that you made the reference to India rising again, because Shakti can only rise if the balance of the male and female energy is in place, and that the nature of taking women, the Matru Shakti, back in our power is critical, and that has not been happening. And I think slowly there seems to be a tide turning, but it's going to take a longer time. And even in the great Mother Africa herself, who needs to take ownership of her heritage and ownership of her way of life. Videshni ji, what is your message to the youth of South Africa today?
So, I speak from the viewpoint of being a mother, and I speak from the viewpoint of mentoring young girls. And if there is anything that I want to start off with, is that, and it's something that my husband says that always rings very clear, very true in my ears. He raises our children to say that the world isn't fair, that everybody is not going to be treating you with fairness. So too, women must understand that we are being raised from an unfair perspective. I look at my daughter, and she's a beautiful soul, involved in humanitarian work herself. But I realize that I have to also practice parenting differently to my boys versus my girl, because there too we have to tell them that no equality exists as long as your life is in danger. Something else that I want to share with women and young girls and youth is that, especially in Indian communities, we become so fixated and we ask children, what is it that you want to be? And more often than not, we are delighted when we hear that they're growing up to become a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer.
Absolutely.
And we believe, okay, I've raised my child right. We forget to teach them that somewhere along the path, with whatever profession you choose, and even if you are someone following your passion, you have to grow up with the social conscience. And in our household, we instill that. If we are raging riot against and protesting against corruption, my children will be on the streets with me. I believe, unfortunately, we've kept our children behind these high walls and agree and actually created an entitled existence. And therefore, you actually see breakdown so clearly in children when they're forced into the reality of the world. And my advice will be, we have Seva as part of our religion. Involve your children all the time. Sometimes I suffer with the guilt because I have my youngest son, who, again, wonderful soul, like my older son, very compassionate, who says, Mom, will you please stop telling us these stories? And the reality is that I can't do it because I want them to grow up to know that we do not exist alone in this world. Everything is not due to us in this world. We are born and we take human birth because we have to learn our duty and our connectedness to each other. And if we do not get that right, then we will die having wasted this human birth. So to every youth out there, embrace all opportunities. Whatever might be your passion, go after it. I went everywhere my passion took me. Today, I'm a professional humanitarian and I stand, in international rooms and I talk about international standards of human rights. And I speak from the heart because my journey has been that we are constantly transforming. So why should you decide that being a lawyer is going to be the rest of your life? Embrace
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Videshni ji. Thank you for your passion and your love and your care and your concern for humanity at large and for all that you do. We could go on talking a lot tonight, and we're really coming towards the end of the program. So one last word from Jessica and Bina in 30 seconds. What is your message to the girl child? 30 seconds. Radhika ji. Your mic.
It's imperative that we all here in South Africa and generally in the world become active instruments of change in our homes and our communities to change, put a stop to the scourge that is gender-based violence. That's religious organization, faith-based groups, the public, the media, traditional organizations, businesses and labor must come to the party, and all, because everything, like Videshni said, we are all interconnected. If we ignore this here, it's going to come back in a bigger way down the line. So the sooner we nip it in the bud, the better.
Thank you so much, Radhika ji. Thank you for your love and your care as well. May our women be strong. Beena ji, 30 seconds. Unmute your mic.
Okay, just as a last word to our families out there, accept that each one of us are different. Our children are different with different talents, different skills. So if your child is disabled or if a family member is disabled, please do not feel ashamed. Please accept the child and the person for who they are, their skills, their abilities, and we are there to support any family that needs our assistance.
Brilliant. To all religious organizations out there, to Seva organizations, you have your hands full. And today we want to see cohesive responsibility, everyone working together in partnerships. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining me in this wonderful dynamic program. And we hope to have more in the next few weeks. And I'd like to leave you now with the prayer. Technical, it will be the last few words, which is the mantra of the Gayatri, the divine bliss of love and learning. Om Shanti. Thank you, everyone. Namaste.